Hey guys, so about 5 years ago, Sony came out with this lens, and this is the 24-240 F3.5 to 6.3 OSS lens. This is one of my favorite lenses, and the reason for that is just the fact that it is so versatile. If you've ever been taking a photo and all of a sudden you say, oh, I want more zoom, and then go into your camera bag, find your zoom lens, switch to that, take a couple photos on your zoom lens, and then say, oh man, I wish that I had my wide angle again because I just saw this new angle and this zoom lens just doesn't cut it. Because I do that all of the time. At least I used to, until I had this thing. Now this was the first lens I got when I switched over to Sony, and the reason for that is because it has such a wide focal range. And mostly what I do is landscape stuff, so it's pretty easy to sit around that wide 24 focal range. But I think being able to zoom in just allows you to be a little bit more creative with your shots. A few of my favorite landscape photos are shots that I've taken with this lens simply for the fact that they're zoomed in and it just creates this really interesting composition. And if you're taking photos with lenses like the 16-35, you're just not able to get those types of photos. You're just super restricted, and if you want to take those types of photos, you then have to switch over to a different lens. And for me, a lot of what I do is kind of on the go, so there's not much time to switch lenses. So if you want a lens that you're not going to have to switch out very often, I think this is the way to go. This thing outperforms a lot of other lenses that are similar to it. And with Sony, there's not a ton of different lens choices to begin with, but especially when you're a beginner, this is the best bang for your buck. I've seen this lens go for around $700, probably a little less used. Again, I get all of my stuff on eBay. That's where I found the cheapest gear. You just have to be a little bit more patient. I found it pretty cheap, from $600 to $700 used. Brand new, it's a little bit more expensive, but I think because it's so universally usable, it's really worth that price range. As far as image quality, I provided some samples in a Dropbox folder, and the link to that is just below. These were all taken on an A7 II body, so there's some raw photos in there, and then there's also some edited photos too. I will say it doesn't perform super well in low light conditions. It actually struggles. If you're using an ISO above, honestly, 500, you can really notice a lot of noise in your photos, which 500 isn't that much, but considering how well Sony's shoot in low light situations, it's really not that great. But it's pretty easy to look past that once you see how well it does in well-lit situations. And I touched on this a little bit before, but this is my go-to travel lens. If I'm going somewhere with harsh conditions where I'm really not going to want to change lenses just to be safe, this is what I'm going to keep on my camera from the start. And the reason for that is in some of those situations you just don't know exactly what you're going to get. I would much rather be able to get an array of different shots at different focal ranges that aren't bad quality but aren't necessarily the best quality, than having the best quality but only have photos from a certain focal range. There's just so much that you can do with this lens. And especially when you enable APS-C mode, which I've mentioned in a video before, that 240 now becomes a 320 zoom, which is crazy. I think there's a lot of different learning things that come with using a lens with such a wide focal range. You can really just start to understand more of what those are and just photography in general. And so that's why I think it's one of the best lenses for beginners. You pretty much just get all in one. You can do street photography, landscape photography, portrait photography. There's just so much you can do with it. And even people who aren't necessarily beginners, I still use this lens. I've been using it for 2 years. Yeah, anyway, if you're a beginner and you have the money to buy this lens, I highly recommend it. Honestly, one of my favorite lenses. If you do want to look into this lens, I left an Amazon link down below, but just know that you probably could get this cheaper on eBay. Anyways, yeah, that's where I'm gonna wrap it up. I really appreciate you guys watching, and I will see you in the next video. Later, guys. But considering how well Sony's usually shoot